Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November Lochaber Area Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. So we have no apologies for absence. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No, excellent. So we will move on to the first item, which is item 3, and thank you very much to Donna from Police Scotland for joining us for the performance report. I'll hand over to you, Donna.
Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to join you for the Lochaber report. You'll note that this report covers the period the 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 24. Covers across my area command, so it's not just Lochaber based, so there's clear local nuances within that area, which mean that some of the issues highlighted within aren't particularly significant in Lochaber and vice versa. So firstly, in terms of road safety and road crime, we are extremely fortunate to be supported by specialist roads policing officers who are based in Fort William. You'll see a significant decrease in fatalities upon the previous year, but that was at a particularly high level. However, 23-24 figures show a decline in comparison to the 5-year and 3-year averages, but ultimately it's still 6 fatalities too many, and we'll continue to work through as far as we can influencing driver behaviour. Drink and drug driving offences remain fairly static, and that's one area I've asked for a continued focus on locally in Lochaber, because I do believe that that's an underreported matter. Then on to antisocial behaviour, disorder and violence. That's brought obviously sharply into focus with recent events in Fort William. It is an upwards track, and we're currently working through a number of local initiatives to tackle antisocial behaviour, particularly in Fort William town centre. And I would hope to be able to report on future impact from those. For acquisitive crime, this is one of the areas where I think the report doesn't necessarily reflect the local situation. But one area, fraud, ultimately is pretty much experienced across the board and predominantly perpetrated online. We do engage heavily with partners to get the message out, but having reviewed an incident in another area this morning, the fraudsters continue to ultimately exploit the inherent goodness in people and just take advantage of them. We'll also continue to work with retailers around those high numbers in terms of shoplifting, around protecting their stock. But understandably, they don't want to make their premises and stock less attractive to the vast majority of the people coming through their doors who are there to take the service, to purchase the services there. So we really just, I've got a focus on that. But again, we have one premises out with Lochaber that actually has skewed those figures significantly. But that doesn't mean that we're not aware of the impact on retailers and their staff of that crime. Moving on to protecting vulnerable people, I've probably covered a bit of the safeguarding and with the challenges of fraud, where some of our victims are clearly vulnerable. We've recently provided an additional member of staff into our preventions and interventions capacity, which I hope will start to have an impact there as well. But I think the figures for me are quite stark in terms of domestic abuse. It may be more in line with the 3- and 5-year averages, but is an increase over the preceding 12 months. And that really is a clear focus for us going forwards. Missing persons and concern for persons remain a significant proportion of our day-to-day activity. There's rarely any crime element to these, but I honestly can't think of a day that we've gone through where there hasn't been at least 2 or 3 of those calls during the course of the day. So we work with particularly with our missing persons coordinator in relation to those repeat missing persons, quite often looked after children as well, and also with the partner agencies around those in the community who are regularly coming to attention as concerned for. But it is ultimately a trend that is ongoing around the vulnerabilities that are out there in society, and we are able to respond, but perhaps not deliver the full package, and that's where it is around working with our partner agencies around that. Next section relates to serious and organised crime, so that's predominantly working around the supply of drugs, and whilst we don't see the same issues around county lines activity, we do have a focus on a number of operations in Lochaber, and we'll continue to target those. And finally, counter-terrorism. I've got nothing to highlight specifically for Lochaber in relation to this. And ultimately, the report concludes with a really lengthy section or suite of statistics for your reference. And that is the quick overview of the report for Lochaber from myself.
Thanks very much for that, Donna. Does anyone have any questions for Donna? Sarah?
Good morning, Donna. Thank you very much for the report. I'm concerned in the rise in domestic crime the last 12 months. Would you be able to say a bit more about it? Are we talking what kind of crime when you say domestic crime? Are we just talking about domestic abuse?
Yes, it is entirely about domestic abuse that relates to. So it's ranging from the fallouts, which we would have a category that don't that wouldn't make it onto the report, which relates to non-crime domestic incidents which haven't tipped the threshold, whereas what the report refers to is those that are criminal in nature. So where someone ultimately would be charged in relation to the offence, and that can be from relatively low level right through to some significant domestic abuse, ongoing domestic abuse, coercive control. There seems to be a bit more understanding of coercive behaviour, which is now, I think, becoming a bit better understood for people, and that it's not acceptable. So I'm definitely seeing more of those kind of reports coming through, that people accept that it doesn't have to be just physical abuse that can be reported. So that's one element that, whether you take it as a positive or not, I don't know, but I do believe that there is better understanding of domestic abuse now.
Thanks, Donna. Are you seeing an increase in online, I don't know what, abuse, scam, that sort of crimes online? Is that something that is having to be focused on more?
In terms of domestic specifically?
Well, any sort of
fraud,
scam, yeah.
Well,
yeah, there's no doubt about it. Fraud is, yeah, it's across the board. I don't have the specifics in terms of the increases in a bigger picture piece, but certainly from my own, when I look through the instance, there's instances every day of people being subject to boiler house scams, the romance fraud, all these kind of things that you're constantly seeing on TV and on social media, etc. And people are still falling victim to it because ultimately the scammers are smart. They are smart, and as soon as we kind of get one thing out there, they're on to the next thing. But say that I'm seeing that a lot of it is just simply the good nature of people. They want to believe what they're being told, or they're being panicked is the other tactic that's used. They're being panicked into taking rash action when they sit back, and if they had a couple of minutes, they would understand that it's perhaps not all that appears on the surface. And a lot of that, what we have to work with is education, ultimately.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I think Thomas has got his hand up.
Okay, thanks, Donna, for the report. You mentioned the motor unit, and I was just going to quickly ask, because I ask it every year, digital scanning equipment, is it based here yet for the scanning of an accident, or is it still based up in Dingwall?
I actually don't know, Thomas, to be brutally honest. I'll find out, I'll get an answer for you and get back to you.
It'd be great to see it coming to Lochaber at some point in time. And any reason for why antisocial behaviour is on such an upward slope? And that was the second question. And the third thing I was going to ask was the roadworks that are going on currently, is that impacting on the, well, I know it does impact on the blue light service. I'm talking about the roadworks that are happening at near the police station beside the Lochaber High School there, where we've got no queue of traffic basically to the Purpuck side, Cool side, and it's queuing all the way back to the dual carriageway in Fort William. I've actually got a screenshot of it when I was stuck on it. I got somebody to take a screenshot of it, and it's a real problem even for the blue light service when the road gets snarled up between Clag and Lochaber, because it's difficult to disperse traffic out of the road. Basically, I was going to ask you, what kind of input can the police give us to help try and get this? I do detect that in the last couple of days, or certainly yesterday, they seem to have done something, because the queue wasn't as bad. I sent the screenshot I had to them and said, look, you need to look at this, because the bias on your signalling is obviously totally wrong. You need to look at it. And as I say, I was out and about yesterday. Whilst there was a queue, to me it was acceptable. I was out about 2:30. But,
Yeah, so I was out round about 5 o'clock, so probably at busy time,
yeah,
and it wasn't bad at all.
Right.
Probably having had previous experience of leaving during the height of summer and what we get into there. So obviously I'm not on blue lights or anything like that, not to go home. But I didn't feel that there was anything significant about the roadworks as they currently stand.
yeah,
But I will go back to the operational officers. There's nobody at this stage has highlighted any particular challenges that they've experienced in
Right.
terms of response, which would obviously always be my concern there. But the clearer a route we can have to anything, be it ourselves, the ambulance service, we're sitting in the same place, or the fire service, that's always going to be the best. But ultimately, we don't have a perfect road network, so I'll just need to go back and make sure that there's nothing, because I wasn't, to be honest, hugely aware of the impact of those roadworks, but just looking at them yesterday, there wasn't anything too bad. But
yesterday was okay, but all of last week I got a lot of complaints about it, because, as I say, it was on the dual carriageway, and when you would look on Google Maps, there was nothing to the other side, and to me, it just needed somebody to put their head up and say, look, I'm going to adjust the lights even if it was just for a little while, held them at green, but it was backed right up. That's like 2-3 miles of traffic you're talking about, and there was nothing to the other side.
Yeah,
But,
I'll link in with roads policing around that, see if they've actually maybe already had the conversation with them.
Okay.
Around
And as I say, the only other thing was, any reason for the upsurge in antisocial behaviour?
I think we're certainly seeing it not just in Lochaber, but there is definitely evidence of it in other areas as well. And it does seem to have a focus on youth disorder as well. I can't explain that. I just need to try and work out if there's anything we can do in support of it, to the extent that my colleagues in the Western Isles, up to a point, it is around behaviour there, but also some particular challenges around the vulnerability of young people. But they've actually employed or taken on a campus officer who works out of the Nicholson and links in direct with there. That is their absolute duty, is to work there and work with the schools. So I've been speaking to the area commander there about how that is currently bedding in and seeing if there's any successes to be established from that, or anything we can take, not perhaps going to the full extent of a campus officer, but to see if there's anything that we can learn early doors from that's really worked. But see, it's still quite early on there, but that's something I've got a real interest in just now, in terms of supporting out the young people in that kind of environment and seeing if there's anything that can be done there.
Okay, right, thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Donna. Just Andrew's got a question. Just in terms of the roadworks at the moment, I mean, it varies throughout the day.
Right.
You know, the tailbacks, and sometimes it's fine and sometimes it isn't. Anyway, Andrew, I think you had a question.
Thanks, Donna, Andrew Baldry. I'd echo Thomas's comments on the way in this morning. The queuing traffic was, where was it to, John? The roundabout over the river bridge, if not.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was pretty appalling. I really do think whoever's running that operation, the roadworks, needs to be mindful, a lot more mindful, of the traffic control and adjust as Thomas says, adjust the timing from time to time in the daytime to respond to the demand of the traffic.
Well, and it's Fair Scotland, and various people. I've had contact with them, and they are trying to take it off automatic and run it manually at peak times. Whether they're still doing that, I'm not sure. But various people have been in conversation with them. It's anyway. I think. Do we have any other questions?
Well, the question was going to be, prompted by the recent jailing of a highly abusive young man, I think in Northern Ireland, and young people. Do our police locally, do we go into schools, warn young people about the dangers of exposing themselves to online issues?
Absolutely. From primary school upwards, there is a programme around that exploitation online and protecting themselves online. So that exists already.
Good. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. John?
Hi, Donna. John Grafton. Just supplementary to Andrew's question, what sort of involvement do you have with local communities, local youth groups, etc.? I know you're sort of probably pushed for police time, so I'm sort of wondering what is the link and how are you working with that? Thank you.
So it varies depending on the in terms of the repeat missing persons was one of the areas we focused on with our missing persons coordinator. So they've been getting younger people involved in local clubs, etc. But yes, we are quite limited in the link that we can do, and that's probably one of the areas that I haven't increased the officer number in our preventions and interventions, just to understand if there's any more work that can be done with that, because I think there's always opportunity within the local community for diversion, etc. And that's where I would like to see them getting involved. So if anybody's got any local groups that would like to have a bit more or just even want that link in, then that's what I would like the P&Is, as we refer to them, to be doing to support that.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Donna.
And ultimately, if there is anything from yourselves that you would like to raise for groups that you're involved with, then please let me know.
Will do. Thanks.
Okay, I think no more questions. Thanks very much for joining us this morning, Donna.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Very much.
Have a
Bye
good
now.
day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So moving on to item 4, which is the housing performance report. And I think we have Jonathan Henderson with us. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And I'll hand over to you, Jonathan.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, members. I'm joined today by Elaine Wilkinson, who is the new Principal Housing Officer for the Lochaber area. I don't think you've had the opportunity to meet Elaine as yet, but we'll endeavour to come to a future area business meeting, and we'll take that opportunity. So on to the paper today. So I'm pleased to present what is a slightly adapted version of the housing performance report today. Members will note that we've split out the paper, I suppose. So today's paper will focus on the housing management side of things, which is under our remit, and in alternate quarters, the repairs team will come along and present a repairs and capital report. So we'll come to quarters 2 and 4 with the housing management performance report, and the repairs team locally will come to quarters 1 and 3. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that, given that this is the first attempt at this paper, our numbering has gone slightly awry towards the end of the paper, but so probably for sake of reference, I'll talk about the section that I'm referring to as opposed to the specific number. So that's my apology out of the way. So the paper itself, there's a couple of things to note, I suppose. the way in which we report and record rent arrears, antisocial behaviour and allocations is sort of cumulatively, and then the homelessness figures towards the end of the paper, we kind of report that per quarter. Section referring to rent arrears, members will note if you add the two wards together, a slight increase in rent arrears from Q1 to Q2. But taking a slightly broader view and comparing those figures with Q2 from last year, I think in both wards you can see quite a significant reduction. The rent arrears figures can be volatile, and we do feel that taking a slightly broader view and looking at trends is quite helpful. So I think for the next paper, what we'll do is probably include a few more quarters in that paper just to allow for that trend to be seen in a slightly broader view. The other section I wanted just to highlight is the section on homelessness and specifically homeless presentations. I think there was 37 homeless presentations from memory in Q2. Looking at that particular trend, you will see, despite the fact that the numbers are kind of relatively similar over the past few quarters, the general trend from sort of 21 onwards is up the way. But it's just to point that out. But at the same time, looking at the table below that, members will note across Highland we have been able to reduce the length of time that people are spending in temporary accommodation quite significantly across the same period. So hopefully you found that paper interesting. Happy to take any questions, and as I say, Elaine and I will come along to hopefully before Christmas an upcoming area business meeting to make Elaine's formal introduction and also to maybe discuss things in a bit more depth. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for the report, and nice to meet you online, Elaine. Does anyone have any questions? Yep. John.
Thank you. Good morning, Jonathan. Just a quick question on the rent arrears. Do you have a breakdown in terms of arrears of how many households they're in arrears because of shortage of money, as opposed to whatever else? So social circumstances, maybe somebody losing a job or something. Do you have a breakdown in terms of that?
Thank you, Ken. So we don't. I don't think we specifically record that, but it is an interesting question, and it's something I can take away and have a wee think about. I think that might be quite an interesting illustration. Can I take that one away and have a think about that?
Yes, please. That'd be very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Yeah, Sarah.
Just good morning, Jonathan. Thank you for the report. And just a general question on housing repairs, particularly. What I get a lot is people have reported things and then they don't hear from the housing department for a long time. Are you looking at reviewing the communication strategy with tenants? Because a lot of what we hear is that people say, I haven't heard from council for a long time. Sometimes it can get up to 2 years. Is it something you're working on at the moment? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fannett. I think, as I say, hopefully in due course, there's the opportunity with the repairs team having a specific paper coming to Lochaber committee. There's that opportunity to have deeper scrutiny of that. But I'll certainly have a conversation and a chat with Lachie MacDonald just in terms of your comments, just around that communication and the challenges that you referenced there.
And Thomas.
Hi, thanks very much, Jonathan. It was just to highlight the anomaly, or it's not an anomaly, it's just we've just heard a police report where antisocial behaviour was on an uptrend, and yet on 7.3, our antisocial behaviour seems to be on a downtrend. I think the police reports were till March, end of March this year. Just to highlight the issue that ours seems to be going down, and the police report we just heard was going up. So it's not all bad in the world.
Thanks, Councillor McLennan. Good to hear that. I think table 7.3, I'm glad you highlighted that. As this is the first version of this report that we've presented today, we're obviously going to look to adapt it moving forward, taking on board comments from members and specific areas of interest as well. Now, I think the table around antisocial behaviour could probably be a bit more, I think there could be a bit more detail there. I think we could probably make it a bit clearer to understand. It was just what we've reflected on when we've been sort of pulling together the paper. But I think antisocial behaviour cases, particularly in a housing context, as members will be aware, they can be complicated. They can take some time to resolve, if indeed they can be resolved. So I think from our perspective, the kind of number of cases of antisocial behaviour doesn't necessarily correlate with the amount of work that we might have to do around that case, because one case could be particularly complex and take us a long time to resolve. But I'm pleased you highlight the kind of numbers there. But I think as we adapt things, that table will look slightly different. But as I say, we can, any other comments and thoughts, we could probably pick up in due course at an area business meeting.
Jonathan, hi Andrew. Just on what you're talking about, antisocial behaviour is, what is it in terms of events? Is it noise creating, annoying neighbours? Is it dumping stuff in the garden? Is it not doing this? It's a whole range of things, presumably.
Yeah, Councillor, it's a broad range of things. I mean, there are certain things which are a bit more common than others, but yeah, it's difficult to say that there's any one aspect that presents more challenging than any other. But similar to taking away a thought about kind of illustrating some of the rent arrears stats, that's maybe something that we could look to illustrate as well. I'll have a think about that as well, if that's okay.
John and then Sarah.
Thank you. Hi, Jonathan, it's me again. Sorry. On the homelessness chart, I recognise that it's new and it's good to have it in here. But in terms of breakdown, do we know of the figures? And excuse me, I'm not very good at putting this the good way. Do we know how many cases the council knows about in advance? So, for instance, there's a case in my area where a couple are losing their home because it's being sold by the landlord. So that case the council know about, as opposed to perhaps people coming in from foreign areas as refugees and needing housing. So is there a difference in the data collection where we can analyse sort of what do we know of ahead and what's like an emergency homelessness situation? And maybe in terms of that would assist us in planning how we work our housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, it's. I suppose it's kind of a mixture of the two in some respects, because people do come to see us in advance of the crisis sometimes, and if it was within, off the top of my head, within a 2-month period, we would take a homeless application. So in a 2 months in advance of kind of that point when somebody would become homeless, we would be taking that application. So that application would be part of that 37, if you like. However, there's changes upcoming whereby we're going to be obliged to look at taking an application 6 months in advance of somebody's homelessness becoming a reality. So you would probably anticipate then that those numbers would probably could increase, in terms of that kind of recording. So, but in the meantime, as I say, it's anybody who is either homeless in that quarter, or is going to be homeless within 2 months of that quarter, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yesterday I was visiting an estate where there are sheds which are in a completely dilapidated state. And basically they've been turned into dumps, reportedly attracting vermin. Now the problem is that not all of them belong to us. They don't. Actually, some of them, there's only a couple of council tenants living in those blocks of flats. But surely the behaviour of some private homeowners or the residents is hurting our tenants. What are we doing to stop that? Because I do understand that, for example, those sheds or the lack of maintenance of the building by private owners is actually affecting our tenants. Now, I think we have legal powers to enforce, to send notices to people on whose mess is affecting the neighbourhood. We need to look and I would like actually the councillors to be involved in this to see how we could be more proactive, because I believe we have tools, but we are not using them. Could we continue the work on this together? And I'd like to hear from you on this. I'm particularly thinking of Section 179 of the Planning Act, which gives councils the power to send notices to private landowners if people on their land actually are causing mess which affects the neighbourhood.
Thanks, Councillor.
We need to stand stronger. We need to be stronger and stand for our tenants.
I'm happy to have a conversation with you separately to understand that issue in a bit more depth, to look at the areas that you mentioned. It does sound like, from what you described there, that a kind of more multi-agency or multi-service type approach would probably pay dividends there. I'm just going to hesitate right now to say any more about it until I know a bit more detail. But if after the meeting, Councillor, we could set up a chat and talk about it in a bit more detail, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other questions?
No.
No, I don't think. Hang on, just check. No, nothing
No,
online. Thanks very much, Jonathan, for your time, and we'll see you again soon. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good morning, members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So, moving on to item 5, have we got? And we have, yeah. Item 5 is the Scottish Government Play Park funding report. And good morning, Debbie. Thanks for joining us. I'll hand over to you.
Good morning, members. Thank you very much. Yes, today we've got the paper confirming the allocations for the Scottish Government Play Park funding. So the paper is asking for members to agree the allocations for the 2 wards. Ward 11, we have an allocation of £182,152. And in Ward 21, 194,000. And these are in the project as detailed within the report, and having been discussed previously with members at the service-supported business meetings. So hopefully these are all in line with what members were expecting and have previously discussed and looked at. I'll be happy to take any questions if there's any specifically on the proposals that we have.
Yep. Thanks, Debbie. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Yep. John.
Morning, Debbie. John Grafton. Thank you. Thank you for the report. It's sort of an interesting question. There's a particular play park, and it's maybe the only incidence currently in Lochaber where it's the flood defence scheme and the contractors haven't brought the play park to a standard that the Highland Council is prepared to adopt. So the community is stuck with this play park that access is difficult because of the wet ground. So there's a home nearby where disabled people will use the play park in wheelchairs, but when it's wet, they can't get access to it. So this is now locked in a bit where the contractor needs to do the work to finish it off. But obviously they're dragging their heels in that, and the council won't adopt. So it's left in limbo. So I don't know if there are any other cases of that, but also is there anything we can do about that in terms of actually encouraging the contractor to actually finish the works that they should have finished? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, we can certainly go back to the contractor and engage with them again to see if we can assist in any way with the requirements that are needed in order for us to be able to adopt it. It's not uncommon, but there's no other ones at the moment where this has happened, but it can be difficult when these situations arise and third parties are installing. And what we need is a post-installation inspection, and for that to be passed in order for the council to then take the site back on and adopt it, because it needs to be at an adoptable standard for us to carry on the maintenance. So we can certainly go back to them and see what can be done, and if we can help to move that along, because it's of the benefit for everybody if we can get it sorted out.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Thanks. Debbie. Would it be possible to have an update on that going forward?
Sure.
I get one of the area business meetings. In terms of what's being proposed in the report, is there a timeline for the installation and for this work to be carried out in each ward? Thanks.
Thanks. So the funding we have in place until the 31st of March 2026. So we would anticipate all the funding to be spent by then. We don't have exact timescales for each of them because it can depend on the suppliers' timelines with regards to getting the products available and then getting them installed. But we would look to try and roll this out as quickly as we can, because we're conscious of the time limit on the spend, and we want to make sure we've got that all spent in advance of the final year. So what we want to make sure is the allocations are all made so that there's no potential for comeback to claw anything back from the Scottish Government money. So we want to make sure it's all allocated and spent as swiftly as we can, but we are reliant on the third parties with regards to the suppliers.
Okay, so the play parks in 6.5 and 6.6, that is right, those are the ones right through to the end to 2026, or are they just this financial year's
No,
spending?
that's for the remaining 18 months or so of the project, and then that will leave a small amount of unspent funds which we're keeping for contingency at this stage. But as we get closer to the final date, then we'll come back to members with final proposals to make sure the full allocation is spent. And we can also keep you updated with regards to the various projects and the installs as and when they're happening.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks very much. Does anyone else have any questions? No. So just going back to the beginning of the paper, sorry. So are we all happy to agree the recommendations? Yep. Thanks. Thanks for the report, Debbie. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing the work progressing.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye. Bye.
Just as you were asking that question, I was wondering if we objected to the report, would we get more money?
So moving on to item 6, the Fort William Common Good Asset Register. And good morning to Sarah, and I think Paula is online too. Thanks for joining us, and I'll hand over to you, Sarah.
Yes, morning members. You have a report before you on the outcome of the consultation that we ran on the asset register, establishing the asset register for Fort William Common Good. We have included with the report a copy of the proposed register following the amendment and following the consultation, and that indicates what we would be putting forward at this stage for publication. We've also included at Appendix 2 the representations we received and the comments that we made, so that you can see, members, the type of interest and what areas and potential assets people were suggesting as possible common good and wanting us to investigate. But as has been discussed when we first alerted yourselves to the presence of common good in Fort William, this is a living register, and at any point items or suggestions can be put forward and we will investigate them. And I think a good example of that is as shown in paragraph 5.3 of the report, which is that as this was ongoing, as a process was ongoing, we actually identified an area that we hadn't previously realised was council responsible and in fact falls within the category of common good lands. So that actually shows the process in action, which I think was quite useful to have at this stage and is quite good for people to see. So I the report is fairly clear. It explains what the process is for publishing the register. It also explains what will happen moving forward, because now, in respect of Fort William Common Good, the work will start for establishing it as a fund and the regular reviewing of it as far as monitoring reports are concerned, and monitoring any income and looking at the assets and what can possibly be done with them. So that there's lots of work to do moving forward to establish Fort William Common Good. So this is the first stage in an ongoing process. And we would be asking members today to consider the contents of the report, to consider the representations and the responses that we've made, to approve those for publication, to approve the report for publication, and to reflect the fact that the items identified now as common good will be reclassified from whatever service and from general fund to feature in the common good account. I think I don't want to go all over everything in finite detail that's in the report. You've had your opportunity, members, to consider it and read it, and I would suggest I just open it to questions, and if there's anything that either myself or Paula can assist with, we'll be happy to answer any questions, members.
Yep. Thanks, Sarah, and thank you for the report and for all the work that's gone into to identifying the common good land in Fort William. I've got an initial question, noting that elected members of the council are custodians of common good funds in Highland. Just wondering, what will the role of local members be going forward in developing a strategic plan, etc., as this is developed? Thank you.
Very much the responsibility will sit with local members. You're the people on the ground who know your area better than anyone else, and you will have before you the resources to look at the specific assets that fall within your area for common good. As far as the scheme of delegation is concerned, the day-to-day management, the responsibility, the ongoing responsibility for common good sits very squarely with local members. The delegation and the schemes of delegation and the governance level comes into play if we're looking at anything like a disposal. A disposal isn't just a sale. A disposal could be a long lease, and it comes into play where there's a value of an asset as against the overall value of the fund. And obviously with a newly reclassified fund like Fort William, the value isn't going to be as great as some of the other funds that we've got in Highland. So it may be that the value of a leased asset could exceed the delegated amount, which is 10%, in which case then area members would make recommendations to full council, and full council have the final decision-making responsibility. But in most cases, all the responsibility, all the obligations and the consideration and the strategic work, we very much like to keep the strategic work in the areas. So what we've done with some of the other newly reclassified funds is we've started to work on strategic meetings to look at whether they should be within the type of area business style meeting or specific common good business style meeting, whereby members can look at the assets, can consider the assets, can have the advice before them to look at how they should be managed moving forward and what services should be needed for those assets moving forward. And there's currently a piece of work ongoing in relation to all of the Highland Common Good funds that is seeking to assess all of the funds requirements from all of the services that the council offer, and how those funds either meet the responsibilities for the liabilities or are assisted in having those funds and having those services provided for them. That's an ongoing piece of work. It's in its early stages. The information is currently being collated and drawn together, and a number of different services are all involved. And interestingly, a number of these different services are also running their own assessments and audits of their own service requirements and what they're responsible for. So I think in due course it will all be able to be drawn together, and as members for Fort William Common Good, you'll be kept updated at each stage as that progresses. So there's a lot of work going on a corporate level, but there will be work that we will look to yourselves as members for helping with and being involved with and highlighting and maybe looking at different proposals that we can make the common good in Fort William work for the benefit of the common good in Fort William.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, just certainly focusing there on, as well as the update, the actual involvement of local members in the process going forwards. Thank you. Any other questions? John and then Andrew.
Thank you. Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Just a curiosity question, really. On our page 33, it's part of King George's Field Town Park, includes Cadet Centre. And on the left-hand column, you say it's therefore not considered as common good. And yet at the end of the item on the third column, as such, they are assessed to be common good and inalienable. But also it's mentioned that there's a trust. Sorry, could you just clear this up? I'm sort of not quite sure where this stands and how it's working. Thank you.
Yes, the fund that are the King George Fields. Many years ago, the King George Fields, and it's now Fields and Trusts, or the National Playing Parks Association. They've gone through various different names. The organisation, as it stands, still exists. But at the time that a lot of the Highland playing fields were receiving grants from this organisation to help them set up playing fields, the organisation itself required that the council entered into a form of trust with itself. It's something it couldn't do now, and there's a big query about how legal it was probably back then, but the council did do this. So the Highland, or not the Highland Council as it was then, it was the Borough Council, entered into a form of trust deed, itself as trustors, naming itself as trustees, and the benefits were all stated there. They received their grant and the deed was registered. And because the deed was registered, it's reflected as having been delivered, which means it's a valid deed. One of the categories of land that can't be common good is trust property. So it's not the only case across Highland where we almost have split responsibilities on playing fields. At least with the one in Fort William, it's fairly well divided. We know what the subsequent areas of land that were acquired afterwards that were not then taken into the trust deed footprint, and they're the ones that have been categorised as common good. I mean, in some of the areas of Highlands, we've got areas in the middle of the playing field that have been made subject to the trust deed, and the rest of the land all the way around the outside of it is common good, and it does become quite complicated. Effectively, what it means is, although for all intents and purposes, the park continues operating as normal, if there was any income earned on the part of the land that was trust, that falls as trust income and not common good income. And there are a number of public trusts across Highland, and there are some certainly within this ward's area that are public trusts that the council administers, and it falls within that type of income. And it's just really to be aware of it. And some of the extensions that we found, in respect of this, aren't shaded on the map room. So it's whether or not the council was even aware that they are still subject to these title deeds. So that's just part and parcel of the anomalies that we've uncovered as we've been investigating common good. But that's where the discrepancy between the trust part of it and the common good. So we provided those asset plans, and the asset plans that we provided for the extension, the parts of King George Field, are the parts that are common good. Any other part of the King George Field is trust.
So sorry, are local councillors still involved in that trust?
Yes, but with a different hat on. It's not a common good hat, it's a trust hat.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that was a complicated answer.
Trust is a complicated thing.
Yes, a short answer probably. West End car park. The income from the car park presently goes to Highland Council coffers, doesn't it?
No, it's from July. The common good contribution is going to the common good fund from the beginning of July.
That answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've got a question. Oh, Thomas, off you go.
It was just the West End car park. First of all, can I just say thanks for bringing this, Sarah, Paula. Fort Williams badly needed a common good fund. I've looked on covetously at other areas that have them, and from small acorns, maybe a big oak tree will grow, and future generations will reap the benefit of it. But it was just about focus in on the West End car park. I know there's a split, and some of the money's coming to us, some of the money's staying with the council. It was just in section 2.1 at section V. It highlights that everything will run along nicely. What is it? It says, note that the properties listed in the Fort William Common Good Fund register and continue to be supported by the council's general fund until such time as adequate income levels are there. And I agree with that. Totally, that's the principle. But it was just, I wanted to have it reinforced about the West End car park, about the sea wall, and this was sort of highlighted 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I shared with councillors, the local councillors, that the car park was actually flooded. Like the Highland Council section would have been under, I don't know, 2 feet of water, and it's just that I just want it reinforced that if something goes wrong with that wall, that has to be with Highland Council, because it's not ours. And I would just like to get a little bit of reassurance that we won't be dragged into this 55-year-old car park if there's a major issue comes up with it, that the Common Good Fund would basically be hold below the waterline just as it gets started. So it was just some reassurance I'm looking for about that specific aspect of the West End car park. As I say, it was badly flooded just a few weeks ago. It could be damaged one day. It could need major maintenance done at some point. I'm just looking for reassurance that the Common Good Fund won't get clobbered with a bill.
I'm not sure I can provide that reassurance today, but I'm sure it's the sort of thing that would need to feature a number of different officers to discuss. But certainly, I think where we've got any shared situation with a single asset, there needs to be an agreement moving forward as to how that is operated. At the moment, as it stands, the Common Good gets 55% of the income, and on a basic understanding should bear then 55% of the expenses. But then is that management expenses, which is what's understandable for the management of the white lining and the car park machines and so forth. Whether it goes as far as things like seawalls and pilings that support the car park and things like that, that I'm not sure. That would have to be dealt with at I think, a more substantive meeting on that particular asset. But moving forward, that's the sort of thing that maybe we should look to do, is to bring in the appropriate officers involved with the general fund side of things and get a clear understanding from all parties where the position sits on that.
Can I just raise one thing about the figures you just gave us there, Paula? Sorry, Sarah. I thought it was 40-60 the split was.
55-45.
And who decided that?
It went on measurement effectively, because we have a plan of the original area of land before there was a car park there. And the original area of land, we can now sort of operate an old map system that has an overlay on it that shows the new area of land underneath it. So when we looked at the area occupied by the car park, it came to a split of 55-45. I think that's what we brought to the meeting that we had with Shane.
I thought it was 40-60, but even although we own the entrance.
Well, we do own the entrance, and Paula and I had this debate recently, and we've now got Paul Nevin back in our team, so we debated it with him. But the entrance has obviously been used for access for a significant period of time, for as long as the extension to the car park is there. We can't suddenly turn around and say, well, too bad, we're going to close the entrance and we're not going to let you in. There has been a right of access acquired by dint of time and use. So yes, we own the entrance, but we would be hard pressed to close off the car park simply because we own the entrance, or we own the area of land.
if we put the parking machines on the entrance, like other car parks.
I think you're complicating things.
So
I
you'll,
do
you'll
think
have
the
to have
split.
this.
I do think the split needs investigating. I really do, because I don't feel that it's where the tide and everything comes, where the shoreline is. I don't think that's a fair reflection. 45, 55. I genuinely don't. I'm not just saying that to wind people up. I genuinely don't feel that is a fair split for the people of Fort William and the Common Good Fund.
With the exception of the extension, where they extended the bit of land, and that land that they built the extension of the car park on was actually Crown land. So they acquired that from the Crown after they'd built the extension. But we also, the original deed that we got that gave us the land that included the car park, then there was a subsequent deed after that that confirmed that deed, but also gave the foreshore to the borough. So anything between high water line and low water line in that area also then sat within what was supposed to be forevermore recreation and pleasure ground, but now has a car park at one end of it. So we've also got that little bit as well that would have sat originally within Common Good. As I say, it was purely done on measurement based on the old plan transposed on top of the new land. I tried to push and encourage Shane to go on counting parking spaces, but he said that wasn't fair. Most of them were in the Common Good end anyway, so and people would park in the Common Good end first. So you tried, but yes, so that's how it was divided. But that can always be confirmed, and the measurements confirmed. I think it was Shane that did the measurements for us.
Who is the head of parking?
Yeah.
It was just one other thing. If there was an asset within the Common Good that is sellable, what would the process look like to actually market that or put it up for sale? If we decide that one of the parcels of land could be sold, how would we go about selling that and giving the Common Good Fund a boost at the start?
You'd need to use your consideration, members, of whether or not it was obviously surplus to requirements, or whether or not there was any use you could make of it, because obviously Common Good Fund is a relatively closed fund in the sense that it only relates to any property that existed prior to 1975. So once you start disposing of your portfolio of property is going to reduce. That doesn't mean it can't be disposed of, and obviously we have sold parcels of land from time to time out of Common Goods. You consider the proposal and you consider whether or not it's something you want to go ahead for, and then we would run a consultation under the section 104 of the Community Empowerment Act, which is where it's an 8-week consultation. It goes out for public consultation on the proposal to dispose of the piece of land, and within that consultation we would explain the reasons why we were making that proposal, explain the type of valuation, explaining what we thought would be the benefit from selling that land as far as the Common Good was concerned. Consultation runs for a period of 8 weeks. A bit like when we consulted on the asset register, any representations are then replied to. That's brought back initially before area committee. Depending on the value that's offered for the piece of land or property against the value of Fort William Common Good, would decide whether or not the decision making sat with area committee. If it's more than 10%, area members are asked to recommend, and it goes to full council. Depending on the type of land, so if it's something that has some form of restriction in it, it might be inalienable land, in which case then we would have to seek the court's authority to go ahead with the disposal. Once that's all been done, then it can either be marketed, and it would depend on whether or not it was something whereby it was to go out on the general open market, or if somebody had come along and said, I'm interested in buying that piece of land, in which case part of the initial discussions would be whether or not we could actually say we would like to sell to them, or whether or not we would like to put it on the open market. So that would be the stages that you would go through. Then the land would be marketed, and then it would be able to go as if it was any other piece of council property, because all the permissions are in place.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just finish by saying I must admit, thanks for indulging me, Chair. I would like just to throw it out there that this item, I feel it should have an asterisk beside it, that we are questioning the split of the car parking and the share that's going to the common good, and also there should be a little fail-safe put in place that the liability for that seawall, that it doesn't fall on the common good fund in its totality. That's an issue that would have to be reassurance given to the people of Fort William and the Common Good Fund, that there's a major flaw with that seawall, that Highland Council would bear some of the costs. And I would like maybe an amendment or something, because I do feel it's something we need to highlight, the split and the possible liability, and protect the Common Good Fund going forward.
And I was going to suggest that we need to organise a meeting to discuss all this as at the, the beginning of the process, developing the fund going forward. So, because as Sarah pointed out before, there will be various services involved in these discussions. So certainly I'd like it if we could have it noted that a meeting is organised sometime in the near future to begin this process and discuss the issues around the West End car park.
I just want to second what has just been said. I think there's something wrong with the process, the way it's been done, and I'm not casting doubt on anyone's competence, but I don't think it's the good practice to have one man deciding this is the line, one man whose service has an interest in the ownership of that car park. So I don't think it's fair practice. We are the elected members representing the people of Fort William. We should be sitting at that table examining how this decision has been made. Could be that we come to the same conclusion, but I think that we can close that chapter and move on. But I don't think it is good practice for one person whose service has an interest in the ownership of the car park to make that decision and then telling us, this is yours, this is ours. It is not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. If we can move on from that, I had a question around one of the representations during the consultation with regards to the Fort William Town teams, their hub on the parade, and noted that they asked that because the hub was built, I think, and was built by the Fort William Town team. But it's noted that that is still a Fort William common good on the asset register. So how is this going to work going forwards if the town team, they replace the hut? How does it work with management ownership of the hut going forwards? What happens when it eventually needs replacing, maintenance, things like that?
There's nothing to stop that. Yeah, there's nothing to stop that being agreed with yourselves, members, as custodians of Fort William Common Good. I think there's a loose end to be tidied up there, because at the point that they were looking at replacing the hub, originally when they were looking at the new unit that was going to go there was discussions about them having a form of lease. And it went through so many discussions, and from what we've been able to uncover, it never got finalised. It never went the full way. So there is some argument to say that that's a loose end that really should be tidied up. I'm not necessarily saying it's a lease that should be for anything other than a nominal amount of money. It's almost like a ground lease. But if it's one of these unusual situations, unless you sell that piece of land, which you're not going to do, there won't be a separate title for any property that they own. So as soon as you put something, as soon as it adheres to the land on which it sits, which this will, it's placed on that land, it takes its title from the land. And what they did was they replaced an existing council structure that was already there, which was the original Putting Green shed. They replaced that with their own facility, and at that time there were discussions, certainly between the people that were involved in the town team and High Life Highland. I don't know whether that meant once High Life Highland withdrew from the process, because I know they were no longer involved in it, whether it just sort of got missed with other things. But that's a loose end that could do with tidying up, and then if at that point it would give them a bit of security. We're not saying that they need to move their hub or do anything like that, but at the moment as it stands, if they were to leave that, then unless they chose to get permission to uplift their hub and take it with it, that actually belongs to Fort William Common Good. It's just a very old legal principle, unfortunately, that people find a bit difficult to understand. But as I say, there is something there that needs to be just tidied up to dot the I's and cross the T's on that. It would give them a bit of security of how they feel that they can operate in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. I think definitely a meeting soon to iron out some of these issues would be beneficial. Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks for letting me back in. It was just, I think we should put forward an amendment that just says we agree the recommendation, but we would like some clarity on the amount of car parking spaces and the issue of the seawall and the potential liabilities and who exactly, what the share of these liabilities would be, if any, for the Common Good Fund. And I feel that we should put that forward as an amendment, and because then it'll be put before the Highland Council and we will have highlighted these issues. So basically, clarity on the amount of parking spaces and how that decision was arrived at, potential liability going forward. That's what I'd like to see us draw up a wee amendment, tack that on. The rest of the report totally agree with.
Thomas, can you put some text in for the amendment in the Teams chat?
Okay.
So we can.
Would it be an idea just to adjourn the meeting for a few minutes and we'll just sort it out and then read it out at the end? I've seen that done before.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. We can adjourn for 5 minutes. I guess stop the recording.
Thanks.
And
I'll stop the recording.
yeah. Thanks. Welcome back to the November Lochaber Area Committee. We're discussing item 6, the Fort William Common Good Asset Register, and Thomas, you want to propose an amendment?
Just an additional amendment, just to hack it on. I agree the recommendation, but what I would like to say is that for full transparency, members seek clarification as to the division of Highland Council Fort William Common Good Fund land in relation to the West End car park, as well as other assets in the future, and also the share of responsibility for costs of major repairs to the seawall containing the car park. I'd like to move that as an amendment, and I'm looking for a seconder.
Yeah, Councillor Fanny is happy to second. So I think the amendment added. So are we happy to agree the recommendations and with Thomas's amendment for this paper? Yeah, excellent. So that is thank you very much, Sarah and Paula, for joining us. Some great discussions there, and we look forward to to carrying on with the development of the Common Good Fund.
Thank you, members.
Thank you very much for your time.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
So moving on to item 7 and the sorry, I'm just trying to find out who we've got online. The burial services, and we've got so thanks to John McLean and Rachel for joining us this morning. I'll hand over to you.
Good morning, members. I'll give a quick briefing over the report. The report provides an update to members on burial ground capacity in the Lochaber area. Highland Council has 23 burial grounds in Lochaber, 12 of which are operational and 11 are closed. Appendix 1 of the report provides a breakdown of the layer availability and the capacity data for the burial grounds within Lochaber. Progress on current approved projects in Lochaber are summarised in Appendix 2. Of the 3 current projects, 2 of them are on track with green rag status, with Glen Nevis remaining on red at the present time. Glen Nevis is estimated to reach full capacity by the end of 2025. Work is being progressed at a site surrounding the current cemetery to improve ground conditions to manageable standard. A plan application has been submitted for phase 1 of the works for significant drainage works to take place. On the other 2 projects, Kinlochmore, the Estates team are currently taking this forward with land investigations to secure a new site for a burial ground. And Jura burial ground design work for the additional layers in the existing site are complete and works expected to start in the new year. And this will add approximately 15 years capacity at Jura. Following on to that, we also have work underway and detailed projects for the current capital budget from 2025 to 26 through to 28-29. These include Blairmore. Design work is undertaken with development to start next year. This will give an additional 25 years capacity. And then Morar, Bereavement, recent works have been completed and design work and ongoing future phases is in the pipeline. And then just to finish up, as your members will be aware, a feasibility report on the possible operation of a crematorium in Lochaber has been commissioned. Fortunately, there's been a slight delay in us receiving the report, but we will be taking this back to local members in the new year. So that's just a quick summary of the report and open to any questions or queries, comments. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks for that. Just we did see a report about the feasibility study for the Lochaber crematorium. So has there been progress made on the report we've seen originally?
The original part you saw was an annex to the feasibility study on the refurbishment of the Inverness crematorium, and on the back of that feasibility study we commissioned a full, we've asked the specialist consultant to do a full feasibility study for Lochaber. So again, details of the one that you just mentioned there, that was in the Communities in Place report, which was presented in March.
Okay, and that did include the Lochaber feasibility study as well, didn't it?
It gave a brief.
Right.
So we decided we would get a full feasibility study on Lochaber done. So as I said, I spoke to the consultant earlier in the week, and he's hoping to have that back before the turn of the year. So we'll arrange to come see us.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Because I mean, it's certainly in this report, it's good to see that there's the potential to increase the capacity at 3 of the current burial grounds, especially Glen Nevis. So one of the questions I was going to ask is that if more could be done to encourage cremations, because this would reduce the pressure on the local burial grounds. So it's just, in addition to this feasibility study, if any other, what else could be done to encourage more cremation?
Yep, no, I agree with you there. And again, I think we'll just wait to see what comes back from the feasibility report, and then we can see what other options we've got to try and increase cremation in the area, which will free up burial capacity.
Yeah, thanks, John. Anyone, any questions?
No, not for me.
No,
Thank you.
I think John?
So just in terms of cremations, if we're trying to encourage more people in Lochaber to go for cremations, is there, silly question maybe, is there any chance of actually having that facility in Lochaber itself rather than having to travel to Inverness?
That's what the feasibility study is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's lovely.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
And just another one in terms of Cool and Mallaig. Looking at the list, I noticed there's 6 burial grounds closed of the total and only 4 remaining. How is that affecting capacity?
Capacity, again, just have to look into there. Again, Morar Bay Raid's got there's additional land within Morar that is available to be developed, which again, that's looking to phase that in the coming years. At present, it's still got over 5 years, but there's certainly plenty of land available for more burial space there. I think that's, and then, yeah, sorry, just you got me on off there.
Sorry, yeah.
So again, certainly some of the more historical sites are closed.
I think so. You've got the current capacity in years, and the Mora, where is it on that list? It's 5.3 years capacity, and presumably that 5.3 would increase or is that the 5.3 once capacity is expanded, or is that currently?
That's the present capacity at the moment, but we do have available land to be developed to increase that capacity quite substantially. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So the work that's going on will increase that. Yeah. Extend that capacity. And Andrew.
Hi, John. Hi. It may not be within your realm to give an answer. The relative costs of burial and cremation. In your experience with dealing with the public, do you think, or is there a way of finding out whether the price of something affects choice? In other words, are the people who want burials always going to have a burial, whatever it costs? And is it purely down to personal choice, tradition? How much? I'm trying to ask the question. If we made burials twice the price of a cremation, would more people opt to be cremated? Is the question I'm trying to ask. If you follow all that.
Yes, but a very, very difficult question to answer. Just a quick note, I think it came out of the last study that the average for cremation within Scotland is 70%, whereas in the Highlands we're down at 45. So I think, just without going into too much detail, I think there certainly is a sort of a traditional side to burials, which we're still got, but I do believe in the future that will potentially change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. That lack of space for burial grounds is a worldwide problem that various other places have dealt with, I suppose, and are resolving. Anyway, any other questions? No, so thanks very much for that. Great to see that there's.
I've had my hand up for a wee while. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Thomas, I missed you.
Just thanks for the report, John. It was item 6.5. I just wanted to expand that a wee bit. It's about Glen Innes burial ground in Fort William, and it says that we're looking at 40 other sites. And then it says about planning applications. If planning was granted and the drainage was successful, what would that look like in terms of capacities, things like that going forward? Have you got any idea? Could you quantify it? Or even if the drainage is successful, when would it start to bear fruit? We could actually use it.
I'll probably bring Rachel in just for the anticipated numbers of layers. Hopefully we know that. But yeah, we're quite confident that the drainage works will be successful. Again, that's out at, as you mentioned there, planning stage, which the consultations just closed, I think, yesterday, and we're hoping to get that approved very quickly with the tender for the works to be out, if not by the end of the year, certainly beginning of next, with the works getting completed shortly after there. So we would expect there to be progress again, probably first part of next year. And again, sorry, Rachel, are you aware of the number?
Yes.
Or
it's very early days to commit to it yet, but we're thinking it would be about 30 years with the current area that we're looking at, and then potentially in a few decades down the line we'd be able to purchase some more to extend further. But the current area would be about 30 years, we expect.
Okay. Right.
so yeah, initially we're looking at a 30 years lifespan.
Excellent. I recall being at the planning application stage for the existing, and it was to last 25 years, and it's lasted less time than that. But that's reassuring. If we've got maybe a 30-year capacity, that's good news. I hope it goes forward. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions. So thank you. Great to see that. Yeah, certainly some progress is being made around the Glen Nevis burial ground. And thank you very much for the report and for joining us today. I think we're happy to note the recommendations.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us, and we'll be in touch once we receive this feasibility report. So,
Yeah, okay,
Thanks very much.
Thanks
Okay.
a lot.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. So moving on to item 10. Gone from 7 to 10. Item 10, just noting minutes of the last meeting. Well, thank you. So there's a void, was there?
There's an 8.
Chair,
Yeah.
sorry, you've missed out a couple of items.
8.
Have I?
Yeah, item, hold on. Item 8, appointments to outside bodies.
Oh, okay. So sorry, I've just I'll go back to the original agenda. Sorry. I was wondering why there was nothing there. Item 8. So following the resignation of Councillor Angus MacDonald, there's a vacancy on the Fort William 2040 Community Stakeholder Group. So we need to appoint one member from Ward 21. I would like to propose Councillor Fanny. Is anyone happy to second Councillor Fanny? Councillor Baldry is happy to second. So congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Item 9, just noting happy to note the ward discretionary fund awards since the last committee meeting, and item 10 is just noting the minutes of the last committee meeting held on the 27th of August, which were approved at council. And with that, we can conclude the meeting. So thank you very much for attending, everyone. And I'll close the meeting. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone.